Tshisekedi Tshilombo Felix Antoine.
DR Congo new president Felix Tshisekedi sworn in as new president. Live in Nairobi, for those of you joining us across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. I'm alongside Rama Young, who has our business headlines.
Yes, indeed, Richard. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. Egypt's economy is forecast to grow by 5.3% by the end of June. And South Africa provisionally drops corruption charges against the former president's son. We'll have the details on that and plenty more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, though, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Richard.
Thank you, Rama. We begin in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Felix Tshisekedi has been sworn in as president of the Central African nation. The ceremony in the capital, Kinshasa, was well attended by Congolese. Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta was the only foreign head of state in attendance. Other nations sent government officials and foreign ambassadors as their representatives to witness the historic occasion. CGTN's Thuli Shabalala has that story. Let's take a look.
It's a day that will go down in the history books. A peaceful transition of power since independence 59 years ago.
Tshisekedi Tshilombo Felix Antoine. Élu président de la République démocratique du Congo. Je jure solennellement devant Dieu et la nation.
The son of the founder of Congo's longest-running opposition party, sworn into office as president of the Democratic Republic of Congo. In his first speech, Felix Tshisekedi called for reconciliation and vowed to promote development in peace and security.
We want to build a strong Congo with its cultural diversity and its attachment to the motherland. A Congo turned toward its development in peace and security. A Congo for all in which everyone has a place.
It was a jubilant occasion. Hundreds of Congolese came to witness the inauguration ceremony. On the eve of the day, outgoing President Joseph Kabila praised the election process and congratulated his successor.
It
is also symbolic of the growing crystallization of the democratic culture in our country, that the lucky elected official, the beneficiary of this historic alternation as the head of state, came from the opposition party. This is the opportunity for me to reiterate, on your behalf and as well as of my own, our congratulations and best wishes for the success of President-elect Felix Antoine Tshisekedi.
Ainsi que nos vœux de plein succès.
It was a fiercely contested December 30th poll. The Constitutional Court ruled that Felix Tshisekedi won the elections by 38.5% of the votes, while his rival Martin Fayulu received just 34.7%. The Southern African Regional Group SADC and the U.S. State Department are among those that have welcomed Tshisekedi's victory. The African Union, which was supposed to send a delegation to the country on Monday, postponed their trip. One of Tshisekedi's first tasks will be to appoint a prime minister. But only time will tell if Kabila will continue to play a leading role in the country. His party is the biggest in the new parliament. But for now, as Tshisekedi and Kabila stand side by side, they signal a new dawn for the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Now, let's get you more on this from CGTN's Chris Ochabringa. He is on the line. Chris, thank you for joining us here. Chris, as always, great to have you with us. A truly historic day for the country. Can you tell us more about the days and events and the atmosphere in Kinshasa?
Well, Kinshasa was very lots of excitement at the Palais de la Nation where the ceremony happened. Thousands of people, supporters of Felix Tshisekedi, turned up to witness this very historic occasion. And we saw President Kabila, a clean-shaven man. He cut off his goatee. and handed the reins of power to his successor, Felix Tshisekedi, a man from the opposition. Many people are very excited. But something interesting happened. Midway Felix Tshisekedi's speech, he lost strength, and he had to sit down for quite some time. Medics were rushed in. There was a lot of panic. Security people stopped journalists from filming that event, but then he later regained his strength and continued delivering his speech, talking about unity, ending corruption, and improving the economy, issues that have really affected the DRC for very many years. And so it was a very, very exciting moment for many of the people. Of course, there are those supporters of Martin Fayulu who were very disappointed. They feel they have been cheated of victory. But the opposition, by and large, is happy that there is a change. That is what they wanted to see. They didn't want to see President Kabila's successor, Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari, in power. And so many people are excited about that.
Chris, here's what we would really like to know. How did the locals receive Tshisekedi's speech on reconciliation?
Yes, people were very, very happy when he talked about uniting the Congolese. This election sparked some ethnic sentiment among people from Martin Fayulu's tribe. It's known as the Bandundu, coming from western DRC, and those of the central part of the DRC, where Felix Tshisekedi comes from. There was a lot of anger among those two tribes, and so Felix said, look, I'm the president for all the Congolese. I want to unite you people and forge a way forward to develop the country. That really excited very many people here in the country who are very concerned about the ethnic tensions that were building up because of the election.
Earlier, we spoke with Monday Akol Amazima, a political commentator on regional issues from Kampala, about the inauguration and what it means for the DRC. Let's take a listen.
Yeah, today's event marks a new beginning for Congo, because actually we are seeing the first ever peaceful handover of power in Congo. Of course, in Congo, we see people have been coming to power through bloodshed. So it becomes really a very historical moment. And also it is very historical in a sense that we are seeing for the first time in the history of that country, opposition taking power peacefully. Yeah, I think he should be gracious in his victory. He should extend an olive branch, or perhaps he should also reach out to his fellow opposition members. And people like Martin Fayulu and his supporters should know that surprise can beat even the strongest. He should accept the results so that can help him plan for the future. And in Congo, their constitution gives them 2 terms. Perhaps he should work with, he can learn from people like George Weah in Liberia, where he had to concede defeat, and 10 years later he has come in. So Martin Fayulu should know that this is not the end of the road. He can still participate in the development of that country. And also Felix Tshisekedi should know that he has been elected to serve every Congolese, not only people from his party, not only people who supported him. Democracy is not one of, just like the saying, Rome was not built in one day. Democracy is one step at a time, and a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So we say, yes, there are enormous challenges, but we say they are moving forward. Forwards ever, backwards never. So the country is, I think, yes, it is struggling democratically, but I believe together, if all forces can come together, they can become a truly democratic country. As their name says, the Democratic Republic of Congo would wish Felix Tshisekedi, the new president, and all the Congolese should work hard to make sure that their country is as democratic as their name suggests.
Now let's get you more reactions. We cross to Gerum Chala with the latest from Addis Ababa. Gerum, talk to us about some of the reactions to Tshisekedi's inauguration. We know, for one, that the African Union had suggested that presidential results be delayed. Talk to us.
Good evening. The African Union so far has said nothing officially when it comes to the inaugural ceremony of Felix Tshisekedi, but we heard from officials that this is a happy beginning, a happy moment for the people of DRC. And the African Union officials are also excited to see that in history, this has become one of the most important days for the country and for the people of that state. As the person speaking before me was saying, historically, this kind of incidents were rare or non-existent in the country of DRC and in the history of DRC. But now, peaceful transitional power from the government that has been there for quite a long time to an opposition is happening. So far as there is no official response, excitement is in the house at the African Union about the developments, the positive developments in the country.
All right, sticking with the African Union, they were expected to send a high-powered delegation to Kinshasa to broker a deal, but postponed that. Do we know if the AU had representatives at the swearing-in ceremony?
Exactly. First of all, the reason why the African Union postponed the high-level delegation, which was supposed to be filled with a number of heads of state to speak to DRC officials to delay somehow the election results, saying that the African Union was not confident enough if the election results were announced, conflict might follow. DRC proceeded. The court has said what it said today. We have seen the historical incident happening of the swearing in of the new president. So that has been postponed. Now, at the moment, although the African Union was not still officially saying anything about what's happening in the country, it has actually sent the Director of Political Affairs, Khabele Methlosa, to observe the inaugural ceremony. So one way or another, you can conclude that the African Union is actually excited and wants to be part of this positive historical development in the country. To answer your question, yes, the African Union is well represented in that event in Kinshasa.
Okay. Now that Felix Tshisekedi has been sworn in, what happens next with the relationship with the African Union?
Well, many people would like to say, because I was speaking to the African Union officials earlier today, that many people thought that there was a crack, if you like, created between DRC officials and the African Union itself, because the AU has asked the country to perhaps postpone the election results revealing ceremony. But that's not actually the case. DRC is a sovereign state. It has its own rights, and it has used its right to officially announce the winner of the election results. The African Union's role in general terms is to support its member states achieve such a happening. Peaceful elections, peaceful transitional power, no unconstitutional change of government. So by all means, the African Union is happy and should be happy. That has been expected. The relationship between the two, to answer your question again, will be one that is going to be strengthened further. So the AU officials have time and again said they are going to be there for DRC officials, for the new president, to unite the country, to work towards democratization, also development. So we expect the relationship between the two to be much more stronger in the future.
Gerum Chala, thank you for that update and report. That's Gerum Chala reporting from Addis Ababa. Further afield in Europe, they're still wary of expressing any support for Democratic Republic of Congo's new president, Felix Tshisekedi. Belgium and France say they are concerned about how the elections were held, and the European Union has only said that it has noted the decision of the DRC Constitutional Court. Our Europe correspondent Jack Parrock reports from Brussels. Let's take a look.
EU officials here in Brussels have potentially opened the door for some kind of cooperation with the incoming Tshisekedi administration. Federica Mogherini, the EU's top diplomat, says the president of the DRC must be a unifying force. She's also called on all political actors and civil society to remain peaceful as the transfer of power takes place. While the European Union has not officially recognised Felix Tshisekedi as the winner of the elections, Brussels says it will continue to work with the government of the DRC and that it notes the result. The first thing the EU will want is to see its ambassador reinstated in Kinshasa. Previous President Joseph Kabila threw out the ambassador after the EU sanctioned a number of people in the DRC over alleged human rights abuses, one of whom was Emmanuel Ramazani Shadari. who contested the elections for Joseph Kabila's party. One of the first things Felix Tshisekedi is likely to do when he takes office is to try to secure the return of his father's body. Etienne Tshisekedi, who ran the Union for Democracy and Social Progress Party before his son, died here in Brussels 2 years ago. But former President Joseph Kabila never allowed his body to be repatriated over concerns it would stir unrest from the then opposition. Felix Tshisekedi has said that the fact that his father's body has been held in a fridge here in Belgium for so long is torture for his family, who want to return him to Kinshasa to be buried. Jack Parrick, CGTN, Brussels.
Zimbabwe's army has said soldiers accused of beating residents in townships following protests over fuel price hikes were imposters who tarnished the name of the military. Security forces have been cracking down on violent demonstrations that erupted last week after President Emerson Mnangagwa decreed a sharp increase in the price of fuel. Rights groups say a dozen people have died in the unrest, though police put the figure at just 3. Zimbabwe National Army spokesperson Alpheus Makotore said those involved were not bona fide soldiers. China has condemned the violent protest as a way to address or tackle the economic issue in the southern African nation. Demonstrations over high fuel prices turned violent last week. Zimbabwe's economy took a turn for the worse towards the end of last year. There is a severe shortage of dollars, fuel, and medicines, while inflation hit 42% in December.
Every country has its own problems, but the way is that we must work harder and try to find the solutions. Strikes and vandalism will not create any solutions. Only dialogue and hard efforts will bring new life, new future, bright future to all of us. And we have strong confidence in the leadership of President Emerson Mnangagwa.
The Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition is calling on regional leaders to address the Zimbabwe situation before it escalates into a regional crisis. The coalition, a conglomeration of more than 80 civil society organizations in Zimbabwe, is also warning of a regional humanitarian crisis if the situation is not urgently addressed. The coalition has called on the African Union and the Southern African Development Community to step in and ensure Zimbabwe's coalition constitution is upheld.
We remain skeptical about President Mnangagwa's call for a national dialogue. It is our view that the political processes in Zimbabwe must seek to promote and consolidate democracy. We need to address the situation in Zimbabwe before it escalates into a regional crisis.
All right, time now for a short break. You're watching Africa Live on CGTN. A lot more news coming your way, including Egypt beefs up security nationwide ahead of uprising anniversary. U.S. and Venezuela set for standoff over explosion of diplomats.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca. Among the crowds in Cairo.
Who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
Along the waters of the Nile. Along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. One of the main candidates in next month's Nigerian presidential elections has stepped down. Obi Ezekwesili, who is well known for leading the #BringBackOurGirls campaign, says she wants to form a broader coalition to defeat the two main parties. In a statement, She said she was committed to building a coalition that would offer Nigerians a viable alternative to the two major parties, the governing All Progressive Congress and the main opposition People's Democratic Party. In the meantime, the head of the EU election observation team says his team have already been deployed to the northeast. That's where Boko Haram is reportedly plotting to stage attacks to disrupt elections. CGTN's Kelechi Amakalam has more.
European Union observers speaking to the media only days after their arrival in Nigeria. The team, made up of 40 election observers, have already dispatched election monitors to the northeast, where Boko Haram has threatened more attacks to disrupt elections. EU observers, citing security concerns in the previous elections, stayed away from the northeast.
But in 2015, we weren't able to deploy our observers to the northeast at all because of the security conditions. For now, our observers are travelling up to the northeast as we speak, and will be working in the state capitals at least.
About 30 candidates are contesting for the office of president, but the real race is between President Muhammadu Buhari and opposition PDP's candidate Atiku Abubakar. EU observers have so far met with President Muhammadu Buhari, other political parties, INEC and security agencies, and the head of the delegation has a word of caution to them all.
INEC and security forces need to be seen to work neutrally in all their actions. The second message is I hope that state bodies and political parties all play their part in promoting a fair and peaceful process before, during and after election day.
The 2019 elections would be the 6th since transitioning from military dictatorship to democratic dispensation. Previous elections in Nigeria were fraught with irregularities and violence, and there's rising concern this too could end in some violence. The EU has spent millions of dollars in entrenching democracy in Nigeria over the past decades and will be keen to watch the impact of their efforts. Kelechi Amakalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Egypt's army, backed by the police, is beefing up security presence nationwide ahead of the 8th anniversary of the January 25th uprising that overthrew longtime ruler Hosni Mubarak. The army says military forces will be deployed to secure vital sites and major roads. There are no official celebrations to mark the 18-day revolt of 2011, but the country is using the opportunity to take stock of strides made so far. Here is Adel El Marouki with more.
Back in 2011, Tahrir Square has been the focal point of unprecedented wave of protests in Egypt's modern history. Tens of thousands took the streets demanding change, most of them youth. Ala Isam is one of those who've excitedly joined the protests as popular move against President Hosni Mubarak was getting bigger. During that time, Ala was leading the marches of his socialist political party, Al-Tagamma.
We still need to work on social justice and economic empowerment. We need to invest in production to increase domestic components in products. We must move Egypt away from the dependency of the one-man rule to a state with institutions, to have strong legislative, judicial and civil entities that run the country.
25th of January is Egypt's Police Day. It commemorates 50 policemen who died and got injured in 1952, refusing to drop their weapons against the British Army. In 2011, the protests broke in objections to police abuses against citizens.
The Constitution confirmed that January 25th was a revolution. And when we saw the President this week mention it during the Police Day celebrations, this means we've passed the stage of hard feelings. In 2011, we clashed with the police, then the police sacrificed their lives for us. Then we turned to protecting the police stations when they were under attack. The police now take major civil roles. They pay from their own salaries, which is not much, to support the poor.
8 years have passed and Egypt is still struggling to bring back its economy to pre-2011 status. Cairo is clearly in political stability, but there is a war against terrorism that is still far from being over. So much has been achieved, still many hope for more. The youth who've sparked the January uprising have been divided. Many have been imprisoned as they continued their opposition. Few like Ala are still into politics, and some have made it all the way to parliament to shape the country's future.
8 years onward, Tahrir Square remains a landmark visited by many Egyptians and a memorial of the hardships they went through in their pursuit for change. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, from El Tahrir Square in Cairo.
Police in Ethiopia have arrested founding members of the ruling EPRDF and veteran politician Barakat Simon and former government corporate CEO Tadessa Kasa. Both of the former officials were arrested in connection with a major corruption case. The two are expected to be further investigated while under custody. CGTN's Gerum Chala has more.
Barakat Simon once was on top of Ethiopia's government structure, a man who was considered as even the game changer, as he was believed to have been the mastermind of many of the major decisions of the government. Since the day he was removed from his post until the day he was arrested, however, Barakat was a critique of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government. Alongside Barakat Simon, it's also Tadessa Kasa, who was the chief executive officer of party-owned Terat Corporation, who was detained. The two are under police custody on suspicion of wasting public money when both were running the corporation. According to source, both former officials are now given to the Amhara Regional State, where their cases will be seen by the region's court. Talking to media, the Anti-Corruption Commissioner of the Amhara Regional State said under Barakat's and Tadessa's watch, millions of birr worth misuse of finance was reported. Further investigation is expected to be conducted for police to back its case against the two ex-government officials. The government vowed the crackdown on corrupt government officials, both former or sitting, will continue. Gerum Chala, CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Venezuela's opposition is seeking to maintain pressure on President Nicolas Maduro after Congress chief Juan Guaido declared himself interim head of state. Guaido has won the backing from the United States, Canada, and several right-wing Latin American governments. Maduro has severed diplomatic ties with the United States and ordered its diplomats to leave the country within 72 hours, but Washington says it will not comply. Massive demonstrations have taken place across the country, both for and against President Maduro. And Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused the United States of trying to usurp power in Venezuela. Lavrov made the comments at a news conference in Algiers, adding that Washington has tried to act as arbiter of destinies of sovereign nations on multiple occasions. Let's take a look.
We again witnessed the United States, which is paranoidally anxious about someone interfering in their elections without any evidence, trying to act as arbiter of the destinies of other nations, and interfering in their internal affairs. This is not the first time in the last few months. It's just that this has been done so flagrantly in Venezuela.
Well, while China says it will continue to respect Venezuela's sovereignty, and the Chinese Foreign Ministry has called on other countries to do the same.
The current challenges can only be dealt with through a peaceful dialogue under the framework of Venezuela's constitution. China supports the efforts to uphold the stability and the sovereignty of Venezuela. It is our common practice to not interfere with other countries' domestic affairs.
Mexico says it continues to recognize Maduro as the elected president under Venezuela's constitution. UN Chief Antonio Guterres warned that an escalation could lead to conflict that would be a disaster for the people of Venezuela and for the region. The European Union called for Venezuelan authorities to respect the civil rights, freedom, and safety of Congress leaders Juan Guaido, but unlike Washington, it has not recognized him as a self-proclaimed acting president. All right, here's a recap of our top stories. Felix Tshisekedi has been sworn in as the president of the Democratic Republic of Congo in the first peaceful transfer of power in its history. He took the oath of office in front of a large and joyous crowd. Tshisekedi takes the helm from Kabila, who has ruled the vast country for 18 years. In his remarks, Tshisekedi pledged to release all political prisoners in the country. He also appealed for peace and tolerance. Zimbabwe's army has said soldiers accused of beating residents in townships following protests over fuel price hikes were imposters who tarnished the name of the military. Security forces have been cracking down on violent demonstrations that erupted last week after President Emerson Mnangagwa decreed a sharp increase in the price of fuel. Rights groups say a dozen people have died in the unrest, though police put the figure at just 3. And one of the main candidates in the next month's Nigerian presidential elections has stepped down. Obi Ezekwesili, who is well known for leading the hashtag Bring Back Our Girls campaign, says she wants to form a broader coalition to defeat the two main parties. In a statement, she said she was committed to building a coalition that would offer Nigerians a viable alternative to the two major parties governing, and that is the All Progressive Governing Congress and the main opposition People's Democratic Party. And Venezuela's opposition is seeking to maintain pressure on President Nicolas Maduro after Congress chief Juan Guaido declared himself interim head of state. Guaido has won the backing from the United States, Canada, and several right-wing Latin American governments. Maduro has severed diplomatic ties with the United States and ordered its diplomats to leave the country within 72 hours, but Washington says it will not comply. Massive demonstrations have taken place across the country, both for and against President Maduro. And that is a wrap of your top stories. All right, I guess is over to you, Rama, for the latest in business.
Thank you very much, Richard. Here's what's coming up in business. Egypt's economy is forecast to grow by 5.3% in this fiscal year. And South Africa provisionally drops corruption charges against the son of the former president, Jacob Zuma.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
All right, then, welcome back to the program. So let's start the segment in Egypt. The country's economy is expected to grow by 5.3% in the fiscal year ending in June. Now, previously it has struggled to attract foreign investors ever since the 2011 uprising that unseated the then head of state, Hosni Mubarak. Egypt since then, however, has been implementing some fairly tough economic reforms as part of a 3-year, $12 billion deal agreed to with the IMF. The reforms include value-added tax cuts to energy subsidies, rather cuts to energy subsidies, and a steep currency devaluation. They basically floated the Egyptian pound. Now, the latest consensus put urban consumer inflation at 15.5% in the 2018-2019 fiscal year, up from 14.9%. Millions of Egyptians do live below the poverty line. They struggle to meet basic needs as they face rising costs since the pound was floated in November 2016. Now, on to the other end of the continent, South Africa to be specific. Prosecutors over there have provisionally withdrawn corruption charges against Duduzane Zuma. He's the son of the former President Jacob Zuma. He was facing charges of corruption and conspiracy to commit corruption related to his dealings with Gupta-related entities. But now the National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA, has withdrawn that case pending further evidence. Duduzane was due to appear in court in March to face charges of culpable homicide over a fatal car crash in 2014. The car he was driving at the time collided with a minivan taxi, killing one woman and seriously injuring another who later died in hospital. On to Nigeria now. President of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, also Africa's richest man, has disclosed that his petroleum refinery will create at least $11 billion a year in the market for Nigerian crude. Now, upon completion, the refinery will meet 100% of daily consumption of all refined products. It is also expected to have a surplus for exports. The project will include the world's second largest urea plant, 1,100 kilometers subsea pipeline infrastructure and a 480 megawatt power plant. The project is expected to create no fewer than 100,000 indirect jobs. Nearly 30,000 filling stations and 129 depots will directly depend on this facility in Nigeria. And still in the West African oil producer, its Monetary Policy Committee recently maintained its long-standing benchmark lending rate at 14%. The committee met for the first time this year to set policy direction for the country ahead of the 2019 elections. CGTN's Kelechi Mekalam found this report.
The Central Bank Governor, Godwin Emefiole, outlining the decisions of the Monetary Policy Committee. Members of the committee have been deliberating for the past 2 days. Top on the agenda were curbing a surging inflation, election spending, stabilizing a fragile economy faced with unstable global crude oil price, America's trade war with China, and uncertain Brexit plans. And for the 15th time, the committee agreed to leave all policy parameters unchanged. Benchmark lending rate at 14%, cash reserve ratio at 22.5% and liquidity ratio at 30%.
In the light of the observed risks confronting the economy, including the global and domestic inflationary pressures, which have intensified the risks of currency depreciation, the MPC was of the view that a losing option was very, very remote. Weighing the balance of its judgment on price stability conducive to growth, the MPC felt that tightening will result in loss of the gains so far achieved, noting that this may drive the banks to reprice assets, thus increasing the cost of credit as well as elevating credit risks in the economy.
Around this time, the committee had targeted a single-digit inflation figure, but widespread floods last year and widespread conflict from communal clashes meant low food production.
The committee observed that the near-term risks to inflation remain the residual impact of flooding on agricultural output, insecurity in parts of the food-producing belts in the country, exchange rate pass-through to inflation due to weakening of oil price, and campaign-related spending towards the 2019 general election.
Nigeria's economy grew by 1.9% last year after emerging from recession. Its growth rate this year is expected to rise to about 2.5%, but it still faces major risks, the most immediate being the general elections next month. A contested outcome could pose a major risk to the growth pattern already shaken by falling crude oil prices. Kelechi Mekalam, CGTN, Abuja, Nigeria.
Let's focus on Ethiopia now. The country's Prime Minister, Abiy Ahmed, has expressed an interest in the country joining the World Trade Organization. He made those comments while speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Addis Ababa is a seat of the African Union and so must lead by example. Our determination explains our active engagement in discussions on the African Continental Free Trade Area and our sense of urgency to finalize Ethiopia's accession to the World Trade Organization. History has demonstrated time and again that neighbors with intimate, rule-based, and diverse trade and economic relations are unlikely to resort to conflict. That is why we believe integration must be viewed not just as an economic project, but also as crucial to securing peace and reconciliation in the Horn of Africa.
Over in Tunisia, Aviation is an aircraft manufacturer set up in 2014 by two brothers who are pretty passionate about aeronautics. 4 years later, the company is exporting aircraft to several markets around the world, including countries in West Africa. Now, the aircraft are involved in different missions. Recently, that included aerial photography and a bit of map making. Adnan Chouachi has more.
Hisham is a 37-year-old computer science engineer with a background in sensor data fusion. He's the Director of Research and Development at Aviation, the first Tunisian aircraft manufacturer. The company uses high-definition cameras and laser scanners for aerial photography and cartography to build 3 models of any terrain.
It's very useful and which can replace satellite images with an affordable cost. So the operational cost of our aircraft is under $100 per hour, which is really attractive. And now we are installing a heavy laser scanner and photography system, which weighs over 100 kgs. And we have the chance here to be an aircraft manufacturer to build the right structural modification on our aircrafts to support such a heavy system.
Up to 6 passengers can use the oxygen generator, a German product now made by Aviation in Tunisia. It is an onboard oxygen generator for non-pressurized aircrafts.
The idea is an onboard oxygen generator, basically composed by a compressor, of which the RPM is regulated with the altitude. So when you go higher, the compressor will turn faster, collecting more air, passing the air through to the PSA group to extract the azote, the nitrogen, and reject it. What we keep is nearly pure oxygen with 96% concentration of oxygen.
The Tunisian aircraft manufacturer views China as the most promising market in the world. Aviation is currently developing the business and encouraging international partnership in order to sell more planes to Chinese customers. The company's co-founder and general manager aims to boost trade with China.
The Chinese market or Chinese economy are really very helpful for us. First of all, it's not only a market, but it's a source of technologies, of opportunities to develop a lot of other things in aircraft or let's say aerospace field. We started by aircrafts and we don't know how it will finish and it will go. Really, we think that making business with the Chinese or China, it's very helpful for us and it's really the future.
Fouad also hopes to sell more than 100 aircraft in the next 4 years in Senegal and West Africa market in general.
We are thinking seriously about the African market because it's very, very big market and we think that it's the future. So now for this year we have an order of 20 aircrafts. We will start producing these aircrafts in the next March. So it's our goal and we make our network ready to sell our crafts in Africa.
Aviation employs 18 engineers and technicians. They were trained by the company for 4 years to be amongst the most talented experts in aircraft manufacturing in the North African state. Adnan Chouachi, CGTN, Bourgine, Sousse, Tunisia.
I'll leave you there for the time being. Here's what's coming up at the top of the hour, though. We'll be looking at Uganda. The country's president is calling on MTN to list its shares on the local stock exchange. The idea by President Museveni is to spread the wealth locally, so to speak. We'll have the details on that and plenty more coming your way at 1800 GMT. For now, though, back to Richard.
All right, thank you, Rama. You are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We've got a lot more news coming your way. Here's a look at what's ahead. Tributes continue to pour in for Zimbabwean Afro jazz legend Oliver Mtukudzi.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Tributes from all over the continent have been pouring in for popular Zimbabwean singer Oliver Mtukudzi, who died on Wednesday. Tuku, as he was affectionately known by fans, was the country's most successful musician and one of Africa's most unmistakable voices.
Sometimes the term legend is used loosely, but after a career spanning 43 years, during which he produced a staggering 66 albums and won countless accolades, Oliver Mtukudzi is undoubtedly deserving of that title.
I remember myself as a 9-year-old boy jumping up and down the backseat of my father's car while listening to him. Zimbabwe has lost, to me, truly the greatest legend of all time in the music industry, and I feel like, to me, he's irreplaceable.
The time when we would not miss his shows between 2004 and about 2012 thereabouts, it was time of our lives. It was a marvel to attend his shows all over the country, and it's a very, very sad day for Zimbabwe. I think we've lost one of the greatest icons of Zimbabwean music.
Local radio stations had his songs on repeat as the music industry eulogized the late crooner.
We have lost one of the best of us. You know, one of the greatest musicians of our generation. It's very difficult to find an artist who is a musician, who's a good musician, who's a good performer, and who's a good singer and a good songwriter. And I think he epitomized that.
He's one person who took his own resources and developed Bakari Pai Art Center. We're talking of an artist in Africa who said, I'll build an art center, I don't want donor funding for it. He kept on saying, there is no way we can develop ourselves when we get funded.
Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa has called Mtukudzi a true patriot whose voice has given comfort during difficult times. Opposition leader Nelson Chamisa said he consoled, counseled and entertained Zimbabwe and beyond. Despite his international fame, Mtukudzi remained grounded.
He always told us to be humble because he said it's not you who is popular, but it's your piece of art. So if your song is popular, it's not you who is popular, but what you sing. So don't let it stick to your head and think you're bigger than the people you sing for, because they are the people who make you great.
People have said that you can't call yourself a real music lover if you don't have a favorite Oliver Mtukudzi song. While there are many to choose from, my personal favorite is Ndima Ndapedza, which literally translates to I've finished working my portion of the field, I've completed my task, my job here is done. Oliver Mtukudzi did his brilliantly and unassumingly, and though he may be gone, we will continue to enjoy the fruits of his labor. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
In South Africa, a sperm bank for African penguins has been established as part of a new study into the reproductive biology of the threatened species. 2 male penguins at Cape Town's Two Oceans Aquarium became the first 2 sperm donors for an in vitro fertilization program. The project is meant to secure the long-term future of the species, whose numbers are in severe decline. CGTN's Trevor Andrews reports.
African penguins are the only penguin species that are listed as endangered. And with just over 50,000 breeding pairs left from some 5 million 20 years ago, they are facing the threat of extinction. Agape and Ayoba, though, are 2 African penguins that are set to play a big role in keeping their species off the extinction list. They are the first sperm donors for a new biobank, which is meant to secure the long-term future of this endemic species. The reproductive biology and mating behavior is being closely monitored and studied as a way to secure the species' long-term future through in vitro fertilization.
With this species only found in Africa, you don't see other types of African penguins along the other countries. but people come here just to see that African penguin. If they aren't here within the next 10 years, there's nothing for them to come to South Africa for, and this is what makes it special. So with us having this sperm collection and in vitro, this could potentially bring up a lot more for our future, especially making sure that generations to come can see a penguin species on our coastline.
Two handpicked for the study, as they were the most habituated to aquarium staff, making sample collections easier for future insemination. But the in vitro study is just one part of much broader efforts to sustain the seabird's long-term future, which includes rehabilitating sick and injured penguins, as wild stocks are at an all-time decline.
We've reached such a low level that it is important to start coming up with these contingency plans. The sperm bank is one of those. Obviously, hopefully we will never get to the point that we have so few birds in the wild that we need to rely on a sperm bank to artificially reproduce penguins, but we could get there. I mean, seeing the continuous decline of the species, in 10-15 years we might be there. So it's good to get our knowledge there, to get our experiences there.
Now that the study will continue to unlock best practices for a successful penguin reproductive program. But with a bit of luck, the sperm bank will never reach a point where withdrawal is needed as a last resort. In vitro fertilization is likely to be a long-term solution to a long-term plan, and lifting penguin numbers in colonies around the Western Cape remains just as important. Both, though, are likely to go a long way in preserving the African penguin for generations to come. I'm Andrew, CGTN, Cape Town.
Time now for a short break. We've got your sports news coming up. Here's a peek at the headline. CAF throws out Egyptian club Ismaili from the African Champions League.